Springfield Echelon 4.0C. That's what we're gonna be talking about today on PP Tactical. Guys, we're about to jump straight into this video, but before we do, like I always have an offer for you. For a like, comment, positive or negative, it's your subscription to the channel, I will provide you with yet another cringy gun meme. And this time, oh, there it is. Right back there. Yeah, this one's pretty bad. The Springfield Echelon 4.0C, that's a very long name, so for the rest of the video, I'm gonna call it the 4.0C. It's the direct baby brother of the full-size Echelon. Released a little bit over a year ago. The Echelon, I think, was a really important jump for Springfield and their line of pistols. I think if you've been around the shooting world for more than 5 years, you will remember Springfield being relentlessly memed to death over the ever infamous grip zone that the XD pistols had. Those weren't terrible pistols. A lot of people did not like the rear grip safety. They had some reliability issues, but overall, those pistols were completely memed to death, and I think that's pretty funny. That entire product line can suffer to getting memed on Facebook and Instagram. However, that led Springfield to go back to the drawing board and realize for serious use, concealed carriers, police, they originally started off with the Hellcat line. The Hellcat was kind of the first deviation away from the XD line. The Hellcat and the Hellcat Pro have had exceptionally good reliability and have been reviewed very well by the thousands and thousands of people who own them and shoot them regularly, which led them into the Echelon line. The Echelon is their new reintroduction to the full size and now compact size pistol market. Now, this market is already very, very heavily saturated. Almost every single major firearms manufacturer at this point has an offering of a full-size gun in a compact version. But today we're going to take a look at the Echelon 4.0C and we're going to show you some of the differences that it has in terms of the ergonomics and features that you're going to get right out of the box. So the obvious direct competitor to the Echelon Compact is the Glock 19. This is kind of the baseline gun that everyone goes off of for everything. They have the exact same capacity, almost the exact same dimensions in so many different ways. So I'm gonna shoot them back to back. Now, to make it fair, I turned the red dot off on here, so I'm gonna be using irons on the Echelon Compact and then irons on the Glock 19. The ergonomics on the Echelon Compact protected the back of my thumb just a little bit better. You can see the beaver tails is a little bit more exaggerated and deeper on the Echelon Compact. So if I get a grip or my thumb chokes up just a little bit too high, you can see there, I got a little bit of marking and cutting already from the Glock 19. That's just something that happens to me with Glocks. So something to keep in mind if you're going to be really sensitive to getting slide bite, the Echelon Compact may be a little bit better. Something funny you're gonna notice, I've got the Echelon Compact slide here on the full-size Echelon and the full-size Echelon slide here on the Compact. They are interchangeable, which is pretty cool. You don't see that with a lot of major firearms manufacturers where you can swap them back and forth like that. Something to note too is gonna be pretty interesting. So potentially in the future, if someone releases a threaded barrel for maybe the Echelon Compact and then you could throw a compensator on there, you could have an almost flush fit compensator on the full size slide. And the fact that you have the central operating group, which is kind of like a chassis for the trigger, you could theoretically have one central operating group, multiple different size frames, and be able to swap this thing back and forth with different slide links, compensators, and have customizable shooting package for whatever it is you're trying to do. Something to keep in mind with the Echelon Compact, you do have a lot of modularity, interchangeability. One thing is the magazines. So the magazines are not completely 100% interchangeable. So this would be the 18 round magazine, but it has this little spacer right here so that it stops the magazine and allows it to be able to feed properly. One thing you're gonna notice if you take your 17 round magazine that comes with your standard Echelon, you can over insert the magazine if you were going for, let's say you have a slide lock empty, you're going for a speed reload, you can press it and then depress as hard as you want. It's not gonna be able to send that round home. Something to keep in mind, just to show you on a closed slide, it's not gonna be able to over insert and you're gonna be able to load that gun perfectly fine. But if you were planning on using the 17 round magazines, doing speed reloads, maybe in like a match setting or something like that, probably would not go for that. Definitely would want to get the magazines with the spacers. We're gonna jump into the ergonomics of this pistol, which I think is kind of the highlight that you're getting with this gun. Springfield definitely put a lot of time into thinking about the ergonomics, particularly for some smaller handed shooters, and I'm gonna show you why in just a second. First thing you're gonna notice is this is like their adaptive grip texturing. It's definitely soft enough for concealed carry, but it's nice because it does really grip your hand in when you start having some higher strings of fire shooting, trying to control recoil. It's pretty good. It's not my favorite grip texture I've ever had, but I think for a wide swath of the population, it's gonna work totally fine. And as like always with grips, you can put your own additions, you can make the grip texturing exactly how you like with aftermarket. My favorite part of the grip is actually the ergonomics and the contours of the grip. One of the things you're gonna notice, like most guns these days, it comes with some adjustable size back straps, so that's nothing new. But when you get closer up here towards the trigger guard, moving up towards the slide, the firearm frame actually gets a little bit more narrow. Now, when you're actually holding the gun, you're gonna notice this difference the most when you're trying to access your controls. So for me, I wear about a size medium glove. I can almost depress the magazine without shifting my grip whatsoever, which for me, for most guns, is not something that's gonna happen. I can also extremely easily reach my slide catch because they've positioned it so far back that I do not have to move my hand whatsoever, and I can depress it with my dominant side thumb and also lock it to the rear with my dominant side thumb. You're gonna notice a little bit of a higher undercut up here under the trigger guard. That's gonna allow you to get this third finger really, really locked in, and it changes the angle a little bit when you're shooting the gun. We did some comparisons shooting this next to the G19, and it was pretty clear. I felt like I had a much more locked in grip with the 4.0C. Because of this little bit of an undercut here, you have your second undercut here on the trigger guard. For you guys with a little bit of bigger hands, you're gonna notice you're going to touch some of the same texture that you have here on the grip of the frame, right here underneath the trigger guard. And for you psychos that still wrap your pointer finger around the front of the trigger guard, great, you have that too. I didn't even notice that until I looked at the pistol full round, because I don't do that. But I do notice, even with my smaller hands, the second double undercut that you have here is pretty nice, and it feels good on your support hand finger whenever you're doing some shooting. One of my favorite parts also of the ergonomics of the frame is kind of this extended beaver tail. Now, it's not too much to where it's sticking out really far like you would see on a 19 or a 2011, and that's a good thing, because when you're carrying this gun from appendix and you're trying to come down, get your claw grip and drop the thumb over, you're gonna notice that with a really, really tall extended beaver tail, that's gonna be difficult and maybe even a little bit painful. But this beaver tail is just enough to where it allows you to really lock your hand in and protect your thumb from slide bite. Something that happens with me, I shot Glocks for years and years and years, but I've torn up my thumb pretty badly because the way I grip the gun, the way I draw it out of the holster, there's a very high likelihood that I'm gonna get chomped up by that slide. I didn't experience this whatsoever in all of the testing and shooting that we've done with this 4.0C. And I also found that this backstrap lip helped lock my hand into place. As you can see, we got a pretty low bore axis here as well. So when you get a nice solid grip on that firearm, you just have a little bit of extra material and you have your slide. So the gun's pretty controllable under recoil. And overall, I really like the way that the frame sits in my hand. We mentioned the controls earlier as well. I think these controls are excellently designed, at least for me. I'm a sample size of one, but I can very, very, very easily and repeatably hit my magazine release with either my third finger or my thumb. And we mentioned locking the slide to the rear. It's very, very easy and tactile, and you're never gonna miss it. Even if you have bigger hands and you just slide your thumb straight down, you're gonna be able to hit that slide catch every single time. Now we're gonna talk about the slide and some of the ergos that we got going on here with the slide. These are excellent. I think that Springfield definitely knocked it out of the park with the design of the slide serrations and some of the features that we have going on. Now these are the same as they are on the full-size Echelon, so if you are familiar with that, it's not gonna be too incredibly different. But if you're not, then welcome. I'm going to walk everything through with you. You have these super deep cut slide serrations here that are really gonna make it easy to lock your thumb in if you're doing a press check or reloading the gun from the front, for you gamers that like to do that. You're also going to notice here, I think this is a really cool feature, is this little bit of a shelf. What I think the point of this is if your hand somehow did happen to slide off of the serrations, you're going to be able to get your thumb pressed right there, and you're going to be able to catch and still be able to manipulate the slide and be able to do that pretty easily, which is cool. On the back side of the slide, you have kind of the same deep serrations, which depending if you're running an optic or not, may or may not matter. If you come over the top, you can definitely still feel them with the tips of your fingers. But probably my favorite thing about the rear of the slide is you have these almost little wings here. Now, what's funny is some aftermarket companies already make these for guns like Glocks that you drop over and screw in and lock in. So people who have maybe a little bit of impaired dexterity with their fingers can really easily grab on and rack the gun. For you guys that like to slingshot the pistol to get it into battery, I think this is probably the best design that I've seen on the market in terms of maneuverability and just how easy it is to rack the slide. Now we're going to jump and talk about the optics and optics mounting system. This one came with the Vortex Defender ST installed. I personally have a Defender CCW on my concealed carry gun, and I think it's an awesome optic, top loading battery. Now what's really cool with the Echelon series of guns, they might have the best optic mounting system out of the box. So what I mean by that, you don't have to use any plates. For these guns, the Echelon and the Echelon Compact, they actually fit, I think, over 30 different optics, most of them with the DPP, RMR, RMSC footprint, which is the majority of your optics. Now the Acro, 509T, Steiner, are going to be different for mounting, but if you're not using one of those, then you are in luck, because you're not going to have to buy any plates. You're not going to have to request any plates if they do supply them like other manufacturers do. You're going to be able to pop that optic straight down onto the mounting system. Now it comes with these little pegs that you can drop in for whatever optic that it is you are using, and those are going to act sort of as recoil lugs, so you're not just requiring the screws on the optic to hold it in place. I think this is an excellent design, not even just for people that are, you know, racking the gun off of the optic, which is not something you typically want to do, but just are gonna help hold it in place, because I've seen plenty and plenty of times plates fail, optics come off because they didn't have recoil lugs or because they weren't mounted properly. And having direct mill is always going to be the best option over plates, in my opinion. I also found when shooting and using the pistol, as we mentioned, it has a pretty low bore axis compared to a lot of other guns on the market. But one thing I do like when I'm using a direct mount optic is it's just that much easier for the dot to appear in my vision. If you think about it, when you're presenting this pistol, if you have a higher deck height optic, it's going to take a lot more training, in my experience, to be able to find that dot and pick up that dot upon presentation. The reason for that is you are naturally pointing the pistol the way that you typically would. In iron sights, you wouldn't have that problem picking them up. But if you have a higher deck height optic, it's going to make it a lot more difficult. I can still see my iron sights through the window, and when I present this pistol, I'm able to pick the dot up extremely quickly. And Springfield includes this U-notch sight. It's got a little white outline, and then your nice bright green front sight. I think if you're not going to run a dot, this is probably one of the best setups you can have, because just depending on how your eyes work, dropping that front sight into the U-notch is super easy to pick up. The green is extremely bright and extremely easy to shoot and track under recoil. And overall, I think that Springfield has done an excellent job in the optics department with this gun. Guys, if you're this far into the video, I actually have written an article. You can go to our website down below if you're more of a reader. You want to get some more detailed information, you can go check that out, but continue watching the video. We're going to test a few different ammo types now for our accuracy. So we've got some AAC 115 grain FMJ, some Monarch 115 grain FMJ, some Remington HTP 115 grain hollow points, some Federal HST 124 grain defensive hollow points. We're going to do 5 shots on each type of ammo right here at 7 yards with our ransom rest on a tripod to try and get as much of the shooter air out as possible. Let's see what we can do. Thing moved. Dang it. You see that thing spin right as I was pulling the trigger? Yeah. I'm gonna throw one more just because that flyer. I just have one shot. All right, sick. We had some pretty good accuracy results with various types of ammo on this test. So once again, it was 5 shots, 7 yards, using a tripod. Now, funny enough, I didn't have the tripod screwed on tight enough, so I threw one shot here on the Remington. The whole plate just kind of spun around. But as you can see, we got some pretty exceptional results with defensive and with training ammo. So this Monarch group right here, almost all through the same hole, right at about a 3/4 inch group. Federal HST was a solid 1 inch group. The AAC 115, solid 1 inch group. And then we had a little bit more deviation with the Remington, probably a little user error with the tripod. But as you can see, most of those are right there at about 3/4 of an inch, with the farthest spread right at about 1.5 to 2 inches. So overall, the accuracy of this gun is going to be exceptionally good. We'll talk about the trigger in just a second. Definitely aided. It's got a pretty decent trigger for a striker fired gun. Using a red dot optic, we can get super precise, and when we do our part, the gun's going to be more accurate than we are. For all the testing with the 4.0C, we were utilizing this Incog X holster by Safariland and Haley Strategic. One thing that is nice about this holster is it's got kind of this fuzz here. It's just going to make it a little bit more comfortable when it's sitting up against your body. It's definitely a higher ride height holster, as you can see. Your end of your belt loop is going to be right about here, and you're going to have a pretty nice wide clearance. So for accessibility, drawing the gun from the holster is really good. It's not going to be able to sit super deep into your waistband. So if that's something that's concerning you, this may not be the holster for you, but if you want something that's going to be comfortable and going to be very accessible for speed and getting that gun out quickly, Incog X is pretty good. All right, we're going to go ahead and talk about the trigger that comes on this gun. So if you have a full-size Echelon, it's the exact same trigger. It's actually the exact same central operating group that you have in the full-size Echelon. So you could theoretically pop the whole unit out, pop it into a different frame, and you'd be able to go perfectly fine. Now, for a first-time Echelon user, I'm going to go ahead and show you and describe the trigger as best I can. So we're going to go and make sure it's in battery. So you have your little hinge safety here, pretty similar. A lot of guns come with that now. You're going to come to a wall, and you're going to have a little extra pressure. As you see it move just a little bit right there. Then the gun's going to go off. So I wouldn't quite call it a super crisp, clean break, but it's good for a striker fire trigger. Like I said, we got a firm wall right there, a little extra pressure, and then the gun goes off. What I found shooting this for accuracy and shooting it at some farther distances, it's predictable. I think that's one of the most important things. I'm a lover of the 365s like we've talked about in the past, but those triggers are not necessarily predictable because they're all different. They have multiple fake walls and can be pretty gritty. This, in contrast, in comparison, it's a predictable difference. You know every single time you press that trigger, you're gonna have just a little bit of extra pressure and then the gun's gonna go off. And in practice, I think you're gonna enjoy this trigger if you're used to Smith & Wessons, even gonna be a little bit better than your Glocks, but it doesn't deviate too far from your typical striker fire trigger. All right, we've got our Lyman digital trigger gauge. Let's see what we're working with here. 3 pounds, 15.8 ounces. Let's go and do that 2 more times. 4 pounds, 3.5 ounces. 4 pounds, 3.3 ounces. So overall, that's a pretty good trigger weight. Let me click our average here, is 4 pounds, 7.9 ounces. That's right about where you want to be for more of a duty style trigger. Not too light, but not too crazy heavy over the top, like the Hellcats are known for. So I'm really glad that with this gun in the Echelon series, Springfield made a pretty good duty type trigger. So we're going to jump into the conclusion, kind of some of the shooting overall thoughts. Overall, I think if you're looking for about a 4-inch barrel, 15 round magazine, this one does come with this extra 18 round magazine as well, with the spacer that's going to allow you to use it properly and not stop the gun from being able to load. I think it's pretty typical for what we've been looking at in terms of everything else in the market, yet for people like me with smaller hands, I think that this is going to be a bit more user-friendly. The reliability has been exceptional. We haven't experienced any types of malfunctions, which has been pretty cool. So overall, I think it's been pretty exceptional in the reliability department. The ergonomics are just a little bit better than, you know, something like your G19, which is a little bit blockier, but they shoot almost exactly the same. In terms of your recoil impulse, ability to either track the dot or track the irons, making repeatable hits under recoil, it's not going to be anything too different than what you're used to from your Smith & Wesson, your Glock 19, for example. But I think you're getting some cool features that overall are going to save you money in the end. I think make for a good shooting experience. The optics mounting system is probably my favorite of any gun that I have seen on the market. It's going to give you a lot of different options, especially once you jump into this size category versus something like, you know, the Hellcat Pro, because you compare this to the Hellcat Pro, they're almost the exact same dimensions when you lay them side by side. Obviously, this one's going to be a lot thicker than the Hellcat Pro, but the benefit of that is you get a much wider selection of optics. You're gonna be able to mount all kinds of stuff. It's gonna be very easy. You're not gonna have to get a new plate. And like I mentioned earlier, it's going to make the shooting experience just a little bit better in my opinion. The dot tracks a little bit better, picks up a little bit quicker on your draw to first shot when the optic sits a little bit lower into the slide. I think this gun is a good value, and with the central operating group being able to remove that entirely from the frame, that gives a lot of really cool customization options potentially in the future. You already have some companies that are making frames for the full-size Echelon, like full metal frames and stuff like that, that you can just take your central operating group and drop it straight into. I think that's really cool, and I really hope that more firearms manufacturers have this just become the standard. I also mentioned it earlier, but I think it's really cool. Maybe if someone would come up with a threaded barrel, you throw a compensator on the full-size frame, you could have a flush fitting compensator with your compact size slide. So you just have a lot of really cool options, and overall I think the gun, even without all of that, it works really well, and it's going to serve you well if you're looking for a compact size gun that's going to have good intuitive ergonomics and easy optics utilization. Guys, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video over here at Pew Pew Tactical. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day.